Welcome, apprentices and acolytes coming in, baby, and you know we're gonna talk about the galaxies inside the Star Wars universe. Ready up.
Ready up. My destiny.
Apprentices, coming into the Dark Temple, visited by Mara Jade, Luke Skywalker, and Kyle Katarn, and so many of the Force sensitives like yourself. It is so good to see you. I am Lord Dagovere, and today we gotta talk about the galaxies, fam, because Star Wars, right? The uncharted space, coming in with the knowledge, yes. Exploring, right? The outbound flight, one of the only known flights that traversed outside of the known Star Wars galaxy. And of course, who did it meet? The one and only Mithra Narudu Thrawn, baby. Grand Admiral Thrawn of the Chiss Ascendancy. These are just one of the factions, one of the species, one of the systems outside the known Star Wars galaxy. There isn't a lot of them, fam. The knowledge out there is so just minute. Seriously. And it's so compelling because, you know, the whole fad these days, right, is the multiverses, and then this, and the universe, and this, and you go there, and there's an extra version of you, and you know, it's all Marvel. And funny enough, that's what the whole lack of interest for me comes from, is the multiverse stuff. Is like, it's not just one character, you know, and which is also the advantage, I feel like, for a lot of them. So now every character that could have ever existed in any franchise can exist all in the same era, right? All in the same story, which is why people really love that, and I totally understand why. You know, it makes a lot of sense. But for me, it's always been Star Wars, man. The far, far away galaxy, fam. Because that's what it's about. All the stories a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And this is where the sci fantasy, right? The science fantasy that Star Wars is, the power cell, right? That just, oh my gosh, man, it just fuels all of the amazing stories that we have in Star Wars. It's just coming from one galaxy, man. You know? And there's so many planets, there's so many systems, there's so many species. And now, we've already known this, right? We've already known in the Legends continuity, we've already known about uncharted space, right? The Outer Rim, wild space, unknown regions, baby. Yeah. And it's all coming together now. And it's phenomenal because there's already so many freaking planets and structures that we know of. You know, it's like the Corellian Run, Lasana, Dathomir. Coruscant, of course, is one of the planets that's right in the middle of the galaxy, right? Then you have Lothal, Mandalore, Arcana, right? So many of these places. Exegol, Yavin, Jakku, Ilum, which of course is Starkiller base as well, Octu. There's an incredible amount. And then of course, one of my favorite new planets, Batu. So now you know. Now the Star Wars fan, the average Star Wars fan, is getting an understanding of just how vast the galaxy is, you know? Because that is where the conflict is, right? If we watch Star Wars Rebels and we know about Grand Admiral Thrawn, Ezra Bridger, they go on, right? Ezra sacrificed himself. He summoned the Purrgil to that battle of Lothal. And together, all of them, the Purrgil launched them off into deep space. And now we understand how far of deep space it is. And I feel like that's where it makes the most sense, because it couldn't just be in uncharted territory. It couldn't just be in the Outer Rim. You know, there's a lot of places in uncharted space in the Outer Rim that, you know, the galaxy doesn't really know. The Empire fortified itself, okay? It built monstrous barriers. You understand? Star Destroyers upon Star Destroyers. You know, blockades upon blockades, you know, the Hydian Way, these hyperspace ways, things like that. Space, essentially the interstate of the galaxy. There really wasn't a way to navigate these things without, you know, being discovered in some way or some form. But even understanding the grip that the galaxy, that the Empire had on the galaxy, there were still areas and planets that were just kind of unknown. And it goes to show you why the advantage of the Republic, the advantage the Republic had over the Empire. Because it really was about exploration. And then exploration, you know about the outbound flight, but that was something that Palpatine was doing himself. He wanted to make sure that this was going on for everything else. He had understanding. He's somewhat knew about what was going on with the Chiss Ascendancy and everything else. And then, of course, if you read a lot of the Legends continuity, one of the main reasons why he was building the Death Star was because to fortify himself of other invasions coming from outside of the known galaxy, like the Yuuzhan Vong, right? And that's what's really cool inside the Thrawn books too, Thrawn Alliance, and yes, Thrawn Alliance specifically, is the Grisk, right? And the Grisk are essentially kinda sorta the new version of the Yuuzhan Vong. But the Grisk seem like they're really more from uncharted space, more than wild space, somewhere on the Outer Rim. But that's the thing too, is like, we don't really know. There's only one book that these species of aliens come from, and they're terrifying. You know, there's a lot of similarities between them and the Yuuzhan Vong, their counterpart from the Legends continuity. And there's just so many mysteries out there. Everything raises more questions than answers, and it's not really unraveling anything. No, mysteries are sewn tight, and that's why it's so beautiful to understand the vastness of the Star Wars galaxy. You see, we already know in Legends continuity that there are globular clusters, okay? And these are clusters, essentially formations or groups together of stars. And these stars are in the hundreds of thousands of stars. And that goes on for light years, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of light years. And every, I think it was around 600 trillion miles or something like that. Or yeah, I think it's either 600 or 700 or 7 trillion. I don't know. It's a big number, all right? Every so trillion miles, there's about 200 of these, right? 200 of these stars. And every single star, there's a system, right? Potentially. And if there's a system, that means that there are planets, moons, structures that are there. And the infinite possibilities of story, or where something originates, right? Because when you talk about the galaxies, you also got to talk about the Force. And I was just talking about Mortis in my last video, is where is Mortis from? What is Mortis doing? Where did it come from? The entire Force in the universe, okay? And that's not a word that I feel like gets thrown around in Star Wars quite a bit. The entire Force of the universe is flowing through Mortis. You understand? And so what's so amazing about that is we've only seen Mortis once. And then, of course, in the visual dictionary for The Rise of Skywalker, we now know that there are phases of Mortis, acting like a moon, or you see certain phases of it, but instead of, you know, the shadow essentially covering, right, an eclipse, and something is shrouding the entire depiction of Mortis, right? This is something that is going in and out of the realm that Star Wars is in. It's going into a metaphysical plane, and it's coming back out. And it's not just the galaxy, right? It could be the entire universe. And that's why I'd love to talk about the origins of the Force. Where is it? Because Mortis also does look similar to the Dawn of the Jedi books, and how these giant pyramids, right? Triangular diamond-shaped structures appeared all over the galaxy, and only people that heard these, I guess the call of what these were, it was summoning Jedi, Force sensitives. They later became Jedi, but it was Force sensitives that heard these things. And then it teleported them to a planet which later became known as Tython. So, if they're going to continue to stick with this story, there are so many things out there that can lead us to what is happening right now in the Star Wars media. But then when you look about the species, right, and you think about how many species, how many cultures can use the Force, you think about the Ewoks, funny enough, and the Ewoks have magic, right? There are mages that the Ewoks have. But then you think about the Sisters of Dathomir, right? The Night Sisters. And then you understand Mother Talzin and her ritualistic, right? Her voodoo-esque dark magic, black magic, which is the Force, but it's a variant of the Force. And then the Zepho as well, right? Something with them. They are ancient. And it's funny, they're not even the Ancients, which is a whole other race in Star Wars that is referred to And then, of course, you can even go back further back, right? I'm probably blowing your mind right now with the Rakatans and the Rakhatan Empire from Knights of the Old Republic that were also Force-sensitive. And then, of course, the Celestials that left these giant structures across the galaxy. They had the power to even move and manipulate dark holes, and they used dark holes to imprison creatures that were beyond power that we can even fathom. So there is something in Star Wars that's always been lurking in the deepest, darkest pits of uncharted space. Intergalactic, right? Interstellar travel. Going to the great beyond and the unknown. Which is, I know a lot of people were talking about Star Trek, but this is the part of Star Wars that I've always loved and enjoyed because it's inside the Star Wars galaxy. It's inside the Star Wars universe. And now we're going where no one has ever gone before in live action, right? And when you think about live action Star Wars, you think specifically about Empire Strikes Back. And at the end of Empire Strikes Back, where Luke Skywalker is trying to feel out his new robotic arm, right? His synthetic arm. He looks up with Leia and everyone else in the rebellion, the remains of the rebellion, and then he sees the Star Wars galaxy, the far, far away galaxy. That is the furthest ever that we've ever seen in Star Wars in live action. We've never seen anything further than that. Maybe potentially Kamino because of the Rishi Maze, but we've never really seen outside in deep space, in the looming space where nothing is around you. And Haven, that outpost that we saw in Empire Strikes Back, shows us that, how far you can get outside of the galaxy. And it's quite far, but that is just the shallow end of the very deep end of the galaxy, of the universe. Space has so many unknowns, and just like real life, you were never really going to truly know and understand that. But instead of a multiverse, you have one universe. And in that one universe, there are so many galaxies. And it's crazy about Star Wars because in Legends, we already know about the 7 companion galaxies. And this is outside the fortified core, right? The fortified surrounding rim of those globular clusters that I was referring to earlier in the podcast. So if you are lucky enough to navigate yourself outside of those galactic conflicts and structures and borders and nebulas and black holes and whatever else is out there, then you also have to deal with the globular clusters. And then beyond that, you also have to deal with getting, even freaking navigating where the galaxy is. And then what that galaxy has to deal with in its nebulas and its structures of whatever that's out there, just conflicts for you to navigate. It's mind-boggling. It's crazy. But it's also insanely beautiful that we have just an infinite possibility of Star Wars in one universe. And so the question does arise, like, where are the Purrgil? Are there other creatures like the Purrgil? Where are they going? When are they coming back? Are they even a part of this known galaxy? And that's the most beautiful thing because, yes, where is Thrawn? Where is Ezra Bridger? And this is the only way it can make sense, because if they were lost inside the known Star Wars galaxy, a Jedi, especially to the caliber of Ezra Bridger, would have easily been able to retrace his steps and come back into the story. But that's what happens. You push them so far out. I mean, what about the Force, right? So the entire Force of the universe flows through Mortis. But does the Force have limits? Does the Force have a limit to how far it can expand throughout the galaxy? Is that possible? We already know that our galaxy, right, the far, far away galaxy in Star Wars, is filled and teeming with the Force. It binds us, it surrounds us. But is that the same principle for all these other neighboring galaxies? What else is out there? A void, maybe a great attractor in its own self? What else is lying beyond the borders of the Star Wars galaxy, or let alone the companion galaxies? Because there has been theorized that there are billions of other galaxies in the Star Wars universe. So, how is someone even supposed to get there? And we do see that. We have this hyperdrive booster, this giant massive hyperdrive booster. But that's the thing too, is like, how do you drive where there are no roads? How do you sail where the deep, vast star ocean has so many issues, so many mysteries? The map is there, but nothing has been painted on it. So you're flying blind. You're going literally where no one has gone before. And we know with the Thrawn Alliance's book that Force sensitives can traverse hyperspace alone. But it's taxing, it's a toll, and it is a skill. And we've seen that with the Skywalker children from the Chiss Ascendancy. Very, very young, they are Force sensitive, and they engage the hyperdrive to flow through the hyperspace and navigate correctly. Without that, they would have gone into a sun, a planet, or something worse. On top of that, we already know about the Verminoth that are out there, those giant creatures that also, you could make it up too, because like, the giant Verminoth out there could be the giant squid, and then the Purrgil could be the sperm whale. There's so many things out there that I feel like we just haven't seen yet, and there's so many possibilities. Lots of stuff out there. Lots of stuff out there, lots of races of species, and the Zepho, the Rakatan Empire, all these things are just the beginning. I feel like it's the tip of the iceberg. And that's why you love creations like this. That's why you love Star Wars, because Star Wars is truly infinite. It can go anywhere in its own universe, just doing it with a single galaxy and a single universe. That's why it's beautiful. But let me know what you think. Where are we going? What's next for Star Wars? Because I definitely want to hear it. Especially when you're coming in to the Dark Temple, visited by Mara Jade, Luke Skywalker, and Kyle Katarn, and so many of the Force sensitives like yourself. I am Lord Dagovere, and I'll see you next time, fam. Deuces.